Doctors, speak up. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the KC ChiroPulse podcast brought to you by CATS Consultants and Chiro Health USA. We are glad to be here today. This is my guest show host. You're not really my guest. You're a common star on the show. Anyway, this is Marisa Mateja. I'm Dr. Michael Perusich, and we're happy to be here at CATS Consultants. We are the place where we're driving innovation for chiropractic success. So listen up, everybody. Marisa, today I want to talk about the fear of communication.
Ooh, that's a great topic. We run into that a lot, don't we? With people who just don't have the words. So because just the lack of words makes them fearful of communication in so many different parts of their practice.
Yeah. And so one of three things typically happens for doctors, especially in a practice. They either clam up and don't say anything, or they speak way too much and just drown the patient or the staff in verbiage, or they speak doctor-ese. They speak too many of those great big $500 words that we paid for to learn about, what holisthesis mean. And we have to learn to not only get over our fear, but we have to learn some really good but basic techniques of communication so we're effective with our communication.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it starts with just understanding why that fear happens. And the hesitation around communication always happens because we didn't practice.
Right.
We didn't write it down. We didn't create a plan of action. So I think it's really just a fear of not having the words is where we all start. And so one of the things that, we preach is use some already scripted things to create your own conversation.
Your own version of it. Yeah, right.
Yeah, make sure it's a communication that comes across very real to the patient. Right? It doesn't want to sound scripted is where I was going with that. You don't want to sound like you've practiced it and those kind of things, but you've got to know what those triggers are. So the fear around communication typically is just like anything. You just didn't practice enough. It'd be like getting into a baseball, game and going up to bat and you've never picked up a bat before. It'd be fearful if somebody was throwing a 90-mile-per-hour ball at you, right? This is the same kind of fear I feel like that we see because they're not sure about what's going to happen for patient objections, or they don't have their wellness recommendations ready, or they haven't, set up what a good treatment plan is going to look like for different conditions. So I think the lack of fear is just absolutely started by just not being prepared.
Yeah. And I can give you a great story. We had a client one time who was having problems getting people to accept care recommendations, reported findings. I said, so send me a recording of it and let me listen to you. And it was, we did an exam. We found some stuff and chiropractic will be really good for you. Are you ready to start care? Now, does that sound like a patient's going to be engaged in that report of findings? No, of course not. Number one, there's no energy to it. Number two, the doctor wasn't telling the patient really anything of substance.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, where did you learn this communication style? And he said, oh, I don't know that it's a communication style. I just get so nervous when I go in there to talk to the patient. I don't know what to say. And then when the patient doesn't say anything back, then it's that awkward silence and I just freeze up.
And we all know we're realistic. You doctors know what to say.
Sure.
You have the knowledge base.
We should.
That is not it. It's that getting in front of somebody and possibly fearing rejection or sounding salesy. We hear that a lot, right? Yeah. So it's just not knowing how to respond and make it a real conversation for the patient. Just be real. And so sometimes even that is hard. So I think practice makes perfect, right? So just spending the time to actually do that is going to be huge. But one step further is having those scripting things in front of you to help you mold and really put together something that's going to be perfect for your communication style.
And the good news about that story is that doctor is now a master at delivering the report.
Right. Exactly. And what happens? They see a ton of growth in their practice after that, right?
Exactly.
So
exactly.
It's huge.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say we need to take a quick break before they put the hook in here and pull us off the stage. We're talking about the fear of communication, and when we come back, Marissa, I want to talk dive into a little bit about understanding that fear. So we'll be right back.
Affordable care shouldn't mean undervaluing yourself, but most chiropractors are still undercharging, especially when it comes to insurance allowances and cash patients with limited coverage. Chiro Health USA helps chiropractors charge appropriately, get paid well when insurance is available, and still serve patients with no or limited benefits, all through a compliant discount medical plan. The result? Doctors stop undercharging, raise fees, and increase income by about 20% without sacrificing care. That's not a discount strategy, it's a business strategy. Learn more at chirohealthusa.com.
Great.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. We are talking about the fear of communication in practice, and this whole idea of fear of communication, it's pretty rampant, really. I think it's probably one of the top, probably 3, 4, 5 problems that a lot of practices deal with is that fear, not knowing what to say or when to not talk and so forth, and how to engage their patients in care and those kind of things.
And I think we see that a little bit coming right out of school for sure. But in the younger generation, I think there's a fear of communication because we spend so much time texting or we spend too much time not
Yeah,
really
good
engaging
point.
one-on-one. And while we can't change all of that, and what your experiences have been, we can prep you and get you ready for better communication for sure.
Absolutely. And that is something that we work with our clients a lot with, whether it's through our training videos or one-on-one or scripting workbooks and things that we have. But yeah, and it's funny, communication, speaking, whether it's public speaking or one-on-one speaking, almost is not a natural thing sometimes. Now,
Sure.
it's natural when you're in a relaxed environment with your spouse or with good friends where you know each other and you trust each other. But when you're first with somebody new,
Yeah.
whether it's a new staff member or a new patient or somebody like that, sometimes we just freeze up and we don't know what to say. And then one of the places that I hear this a lot is this hesitation around making treatment recommendations. And I hear doctors say sometimes, I don't know what kind of recommendations to make. Okay. Now, when you say that to yourself, you have just manifested a fear in your mind. So when you go in, that manifestation of not knowing, you telling yourself you don't know what recommendations to make is going to come out in your talk. And subconsciously, you're going to notice it. And that's part of what makes you freeze up. So we have to put positive affirmations in our head. And this is where practicing your communication really comes into play. I tell doctors all the time, and I used to do this: stand in front of the mirror and deliver a report of findings until it's good, because there's no better critic than yourself.
Sure.
And that's sometimes how you get over those fears, is by just stop manifesting the negative and start manifesting the positive.
Well, and one other thing that brings up for me is just making sure you have the knowledge base. And
Mhm.
so when we think about treatment plans, a lot of times it's not necessarily your doctor recommendations. What happens is I think they get tripped up with the insurance part of everything. So that insurance component or layer in there really trips up a lot of doctors because they're trying to figure out, how do I create a treatment plan that goes with what their insurance is doing, versus just create the treatment
Create a
plan.
treatment plan.
But I think that limited knowledge there can affect how you're presenting that, and then that's where you get kind of flubbed up in your words. And so if you spend the time to understand insurance, to understand what each plan does for the patient and what it doesn't do for the patient, starts with, of course, verifying benefits on the patient, and then really studying that and understanding that gives you the knowledge base to be able to talk to a patient about that. But it doesn't mean that factors into your treatment plan. I think it's more the communication part of it.
Exactly. And you have to be convicted about your treatment recommendations. So what do we see a lot when it comes to insurance? We see doctors hiding behind insurance and trying to make the patient think everything's covered.
But a lot of times that's because of that fear of that communication with the patient.
Exactly.
And really that goes away if you have the knowledge base and you are comfortable with what's going to happen.
Exactly.
So, and again, that all just, it's like a vicious circle, right? We're right back to better communication will solve all of that.
Yep. And we see doctors do this. We see them bundle things together a little bit because they're scared to tell the patient that Shockwave, for example, isn't covered by their insurance, and it's $79 a treatment. So we have to get away from that. That's driving that negative affirmation in your brain that you're already telling yourself the patient's not going to pay for it. So guess what? When you communicate in that manner, guess what? You're going to make that come to fruition. It's going to come true that the patient's going to think they can't pay for it.
Absolutely. And the second part of this layer is your employees. They listen to you. They hear you. So if you're fearful of it, they're going to be fearful of it.
Yeah.
And so the only way around that is to get better knowledge, better training, better understanding of how we're going to speak to people and what we're going to communicate. But it's not just you docs, it's everybody on your team is the key factor there. Everybody has to be on the same page, saying the same things, and have that coordinated communication so that we don't fall into those fear traps.
Yeah. And when it comes to insurance, don't hide behind it. Just be convicted about your treatment recommendations and put it out there, because I'm going to challenge everybody. And the challenge is, stop believing that every patient thinks their insurance covers everything 100%. I can almost guarantee you that 99.9% of the population knows insurance doesn't cover everything. But if we lead them to believe that, guess what? Then they're going to believe it. So we've got to make sure that we're not using that fear factor of communication and in such a manner that we can't talk to patients about what they need for care. And we get paid.
Somebody that's done billing and insurance for a very long time now, I can tell you that I do. For myself personally anymore, I absolutely ask what the cash rate is on stuff before I even tell anybody else insurance. Because I want to know the comparison of what's going to happen. Is my insurance even worth it? And I think there's a lot of people out there understanding that you may have a better deal under the cash thing, especially if you're not worried about it going to your deductible. So if I know for a fact I'm not going to meet my deductible for the rest of the year, I want the better rate.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think a lot of that fear is manifested in our head a lot of times. And really the truth is patients do know that that's the case. They know that insurance doesn't cover everything. So
they do. And if we let that fear of communicating properly with patients, if we let that fear manifest, there's a high cost to that fear. It's costing you money. It's costing you revenue. It's costing you practice growth. It's costing you the opportunity to work with patients in your community and help them see how amazing chiropractic is with the outcomes that you get. We lose patients because of it. They drop out, they sneak out, they don't ever want to come back. And we leave a bad taste in their mouth about chiropractic because we were too scared to communicate appropriately to them.
Yeah. So for our patients, we just create almost confusion for them if you're not careful. And so what happens when they're confused or they don't see the value? And that's the big thing too, is if we're showing value, then you really eliminate a lot of that confusion and those kind of things on what you're recommending for patients. If that confusion is there, what happens? Those are the people that typically drop out when the pain is gone. And then instead of understanding what the long-term benefits of chiropractic could be, So for patients, we definitely don't want to be creating confusion.
We don't. And we need to also make sure that we're communicating in a manner that's helping patients understand what their progress is on each visit. And I've said this for years, chiropractic to the patient is fairly boring. When they're laying face down on the table, they don't know what we're doing. To them, it's the same treatment over and over. And they get to the point where, you said this a second ago, they become confused by it. Why am I coming in? Why are we doing the same thing over and over? Am I really progressing if we're doing the same thing over and over? So we have to make sure we're communicating to patients about that daily progress.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they lose sight of what the objectives are, what the goals are.
Absolutely. And then on the employee side, if they are confused or don't have the words, they don't have the verbiage to be able to communicate well, and they're hearing that the doctor is a little confused as well, what happens? They're
Right.
going to probably have increased burnout and anxiety, and they're not going to stay in that position very long. And
Right.
so that's when those turnovers start to happen in your practice. And it's really hard to get your feet under you if you are having employee turnover all the time.
Yep.
So we got to be careful with that. And, you know, of course, that's going to, both of those factors, the patients and the employees, are going to affect our retention factor within our practice.
And I want to I've got a great example of how much our staff is listening to us.
Mhm.
I was talking to a new client the other day, and one of his issues is his front desk person talks to patients too much, spends way too much time talking to them. And I said, okay, what are they talking about? Are they talking about their case, their condition, how they're progressing? No, they're talking about the weather. And she's always telling them, you know, a vacation coming up and, you know, what she's going to do on her vacation. And I said, okay, so it's all personal communication. It is. And I said, okay, that's interesting. I said, what do you talk to patients about when they're laying on the table? Dead silence for just a second. Huh. Well, let's see. I talk about what I do on the weekends. I talk about the weather. I talk about, and I interrupted. And I said, everything but chiropractic care and their case. And he said, yeah. And I said, do you think your staff's listening to you?
Yeah. And you said something interesting in there. The doctor said what I did, and the staff person the same thing, what I did or what vacation I have.
It was all about them.
It's all about them, and you got to flip the script. You got to
Yeah.
flip the script. That's more of that communication. They're rambling because they're fearful of what they should talk about. Again, that goes back to having some good coordinated communication about the patient starting your days out, you know,
And
and
that's exactly what it was. That's exactly what we uncovered was
yeah.
has this fear of, I'm not sure what to tell patients on each visit. And I said, how about telling them how much better they're doing?
And the good
In
news
the
is
story.
for clients, we have some of those things already lined out for you to
Yeah,
help you. So
exactly.
if you're a client listening, go to your form section and download that.
Yes. Or jump on our calendars and
Yes,
let's help
exactly.
overcome this. So
Yes.
we need to take another break, but
Yes.
let's take a quick break. We'll hear a word from our sponsors. When we come back, we can kind of wrap this up a little bit and really help doctors kind of work on overcoming this fear of communication because it's not something you should be afraid of. So we'll be right back.
Patient numbers dipping, staff overwhelmed, and another marketing idea promising the world but delivering nothing. These pressures feel familiar to nearly every chiropractic clinic today. Across the country, chiropractors work hard, yet many find themselves stuck, balancing patient care with the nonstop demands of running a business. That's where the real strain begins. Most clinics face the same set of hurdles: inconsistent new patient flow, operational bottlenecks, and the constant challenge of staying visible in an overcrowded digital space. National reports show that over 60% of clinics struggle with scheduling efficiency alone, and even more lack a clear marketing strategy that reliably converts. But the good news? These challenges aren't roadblocks, they're signals. With the right procedures, smarter outreach, and guidance built specifically for chiropractic practices, clinics can turn daily stress into sustainable growth. Stronger clinics start with smarter strategies. Grow your practice with confidence. Book your strategy session with CATS Consultants.
Okay, we are back and we've been talking about the fear of communication in your practice and really what a practice killer it can be because it does all kinds of things. It drives your revenue down, it drives your dropouts up, it drives down your status, if you will, in your community, and it burns out your staff too, I think, in some ways. So we have to make sure that we have really good, I'm going to call it communication strategies.
Yeah.
Communication really is a way to tactically keep patients in your practice, help patients understand the value of chiropractic care, help your staff understand also how to communicate that to patients along the way, help you with your table talk, those kind of things. So
Yeah.
communication is incredibly important.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think some of the strategies look like this. One, get organized. What communication do you need? What kind of communication do you have on a daily basis? We know what that is. You know what that is.
Mhm.
So, starting with some pre built scripts and frameworks that help you get past and overcome the fear of being right in front of the patient and going blank.
Right.
We've got to get over that to start with. So, some of those pre built scripts are good for that. We highly recommend you don't script it, make it yours and bring the key points into a conversation with a patient so it sounds more like a conversation. So that would be number one. Number two is everybody's favorite. I would say you need to role play.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and I laugh at that a little bit because it's not my favorite thing to do either. I get it. But the fact that you practice it puts it in your mind and then all of a sudden it becomes easier and easier.
Mhm.
The new patient call in our practice became something that I never had to look at anything. It just rolls off the tongue and I could
Sure.
remember every key point I needed to tell them before we hung up.
Sure.
That doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
That was years and years and years of doing it every single day
Yep.
and perfecting it as we went. But then keeping those practices and those things going is incredibly important. I would say probably education of your employees, your team, you
Huge.
on insurance billing, all of those kind of things for sure. Education on what patients need to hear from you
Mhm.
and what they're looking for. Obviously, we know what those questions and answers are that we need to get out of the patient,
Mhm.
but those are things that you've got to work on. So I would say there's a lot of regularly scheduled training that needs to happen.
Exactly, exactly, and that's one of the big things that obviously we help with at CATS Consultants, but you can't overtrain and overeducate your staff. I see a lot of doctors kind of keeping chiropractic a little bit of a secret from their staff and never telling them, this is an interesting case. This is why chiropractic is going to help this patient. It's a knee condition. It's not a back condition, a spine condition. I help them understand the breadth of what we do.
Yeah.
Also, I think you have to be, and you kind of touched on this, Marissa, I think you have to make sure that you're prepared to communicate.
Mhm.
And so giving yourself time to really understand and know a case before you deliver a report of findings, being sure that you understand what the patient's objectives and goals are, and making sure that you can set the treatment goals around that so that the plan feels is communicated in a way to the patient that it feels like their plan and not
Yeah.
else's plan. And that's what helps engage patients. And that's just your communication style coming across to the patient in a manner that says, you can trust me. We're going to be a team here, but you can trust me.
Yeah.
And if you don't get prepared, you're going in cold. People ask me all the time, oh my gosh, you're so good. Because obviously our clients hear me do report of findings all the time. And they say, oh my gosh, you're so good at it. No, it's because I prepared for it. And like Marissa said, I've done it over and over for years and years and years. However, even though I've done it over and over and over, when I go in with a patient, it's their report of findings. And I make sure that it's presented in a manner that they think it's their report of findings. So if a patient, for some reason, hears me deliver another report of findings to another patient, it's not identical.
Exactly.
And so this is where you can't, scripts are helpful because it helps give you the pattern of communication, but you don't want to memorize the script. I've seen doctors memorize scripts so much that they get through 75% of the script and then they forget a line and they just freeze up.
Yeah.
Like little kids do in an elementary school play when they forget a line, they
To
freeze
me,
up.
to me, it was always memorize the key points, right?
Right.
What are the key points in this conversation do I need to make sure to ask or say? So, especially like a new patient calls a great example, but I always asked questions, like any history of stroke, any
Right.
heart conditions, have you had any of that recently? But I would build that into the conversation. It wasn't a canned statement within the conversation. It was, let's talk a little bit about your history. And I would build that into a conversation with a patient. So everything has to feel like the patient is number one.
And when you are getting that sense from the patient, that in and of itself will take the fear of communication away from you. because you're going to feel good about it. So practice, get prepared, and don't fill your mind with negativity about communication. It really can be pretty easy. Most of all, it can be very fun too. So Marissa, anything to add? Tell everybody about all the resources we have on our website.
Yeah, I mean, go visit our website. We've got a free resource page with several different classes out there that you can tap into. There's downloads all over the place on the website. You can schedule a quick consulting call with us. We do your first one for free. Don't worry.
Yep.
And see
And we're no pressure.
what your needs are and those kind of things. You know, the big thing is just remember, we're here to help. And
Yep.
so I talked to a gentleman the other day, probably wasn't ready for consulting, and I told him that, you know, and but I gave him some things that he could do in the meantime, and he was elated because that was what he needed. Just what direction do I go? And I think that's important. This profession needs to help each other, and that's what we do. So make sure you check us out, and if you want to chat, hit the let's chat button and schedule those times.
Yep. And I want everybody to know too that, you know, cats as a name in the profession has been around a long time, but we're fresh ideas. We're constantly innovating new ways to practice. We're constantly keeping up with all the changes in the profession and really staying ahead of it. And that's why our clients are doing so well. So
So
face your fears. Face your fears. Face your fears. Go to catsconsultants.com and check us out. So Marissa, thanks for being here today. And on behalf of all of us at Cats Consultants, also want to thank Chiro Health USA. We'll see you guys next time.
See ya.